Divorce happens. In fact, it happens to almost 50% of first marriages. So let's talk about it. Welcome to Divorce Happens, a podcast to educate, inspire, support, and yes, make you laugh through divorce and beyond so that you can start fresh on the next phase of your journey. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh.
You get divorced. You get divorced.
Getting divorced?
I'm getting a divorce.
You're getting a divorce.
Because she's getting a divorce.
So what if I get divorced?
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Divorce Happens, the show where we support you before, during, and after divorce with education, inspiration, and a little bit of laughter. Because as you know, divorce happens and then you start fresh. We are here with one of our fantastic, amazing fresh starts experts, Lisa Lisser, talking about something that I wish people talked about when I was going through divorce because it's really important. Before we dive in, I'm going to have Lisa introduce herself. So Lisa, who are you? What do you do?
Oh, thank you so much, Olivia. I love to be here. I'm Lisa Lisser. I am currently a divorce and life transition coach. My background is broad, as I think so many of your audience are, because we are a lot of things. So I started as a litigator in a big firm, and then I left to raise my children and became a nonprofit leader. I did public speaking, I did allocations, I did fundraising, and then I got into Jewish learning. But then I got divorced and I needed to reinvent myself. So I got a master's in Jewish education, a master's with a certificate in spiritual counseling. And then I heard about divorce coaching. So I was like, wow, this is a space where I could blend my knowledge of the experience of divorce with my legal background and my spiritual guidance to help people get through this process, holding on to a little bit of their soul and feeling more grounded.
Which is so important. So let's dig into this. So much of divorce is like, I call it a holy reclamation, right? You're like reclaiming your life. And it's spiritual, right? And that's the thing I think most people don't understand unless you've really gone through it, is how deep it goes into your soul.
Yeah.
So you've worked with so many people, men and women, through divorce. What have you found? What's the reason you think, I'm curious as an educator, that it does touch your soul so deeply?
So divorce goes to the heart of our identity, right? We have an image of who we are. We are connected to that. It helps us define ourselves and links us to our purpose. So if our purpose is to be a wife and mom, and all of a sudden we're not a wife, then we don't know who we are. And or maybe it's just that we forget. And how do we reconnect to our soul so that we shift from being in a role model that I have to be this role, and if I'm not this role, then I'm a failure, to a soul model that is the piece of us that links all the different roles we carry together because it's based on our values. So that's where soul and spirituality comes in to all these big life transitions, especially divorce.
Role model to soul model. I think that's your first book there, Lisa. That's amazing. I love that. So how does this play into divorce? Because divorce kind of throws a wrench in all of our life values and systems and beliefs. But we also want to come out the other side without blowing everything up. So
Right.
how do we lean into our soul model through the divorce process?
So what I work on with my clients is values clarification, right? When we start to articulate what's important to us, what do we value? What do we want our children to learn from us? How do we want them to remember us through this process? We're starting to dig into our soul. We're starting to dig into that spiritual place that connects us to our innermost core, and using that as the foundation, the grounding foundation for all of our decisions. And divorce decisions are hard and dysregulating and confusing and fear-inducing. But if we can stay grounded in what's important to me, what are my true values, that connects us to our soul, our spirit, and our strategy.
Yeah, I love that. So, I guess the piece of this that I had trouble with, Lisa,
Mhm.
is that I have ADHD, and so sometimes I get very black and white thinking, right? So when I was going through my divorce, it was like, well, I'm gonna lean in and be a full feral witch, and this is just what I'm gonna do. Or it's I'm not gonna tap into my spirituality at all, right? And I'm just going to be more like cut and dry. How do we blend our spirituality with that groundedness of, to get us through this time without losing focus of our own values?
Yeah. So you said a lot of really interesting things there. Like, on the one hand, hitting into your feral, aggressive self as if that were your spirit. It
Right.
might feel like your spirit animal at that moment,
Yeah.
but how to be like as if there's the opposite of that, which is cold and specific and very factual. So there is a space that we blend those two things. So you want to stand for what you believe in and stand in your values and stand as a role model to your kids. What do you want them to remember about the process, while still keeping your eye on the strategic things you need? What do I need? How can I communicate to get what I need and stand in my values? So that blends the two. I have to tell you, I read a little interview with um, an author, Alan Marinus, and he writes about Jewish spirituality all the time and the Musar practice, which is a Jewish spiritual practice. And he talks about, the structure of religion is like the technical stuff, right? Spirituality is outside of that. Spirituality is tapping into like a higher power and an inner power. And you can be spiritual without the structure. But the real power comes when you blend the spirit with the structure, because that way you have something to hold your spirit, to contain it. So, like he described, like when you do the blessing over the wine on Shabbat, which is called Kiddush. And you could just do a blessing over wine, which is the spiritual substance, but it would drip through your fingers. You need the solid cup to hold it. And that's the framework of the religion. And so in divorce, it's not a religion, but what's the framework of the divorce process? What do I need to do in order to take the right steps to move forward? And then
Mm.
how do I put my values into that cup so that now I have a blend of both? So, yeah, there are going to be moments you want to be that feral cat and just get
Mhm.
everything because you have such a high level of emotion. And what happens if you contract that a little bit
Mm.
and fit yourself into a space that can support you? It's not making yourself smaller to be less important,
Right.
but it's about containing the energy so that it's directed.
Okay, well, you're just blowing my mind on every level here. Um, I, I love that so much. So my next question for you is, how do we do that, Lisa?
I know, right? Like, how do we do that? That sounds really interesting, like when you say the words,
Mm-hmm.
but what is the practice for that?
Right.
So, the first thing is noticing. The first thing is, when are you getting in that zone where you feel like you need to attack? Notice the feeling. Notice what's happening in your body. Taking the pause to notice interrupts the cycle so you don't lash out in a way that might feel good in the moment, but is really ineffective in the long term, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you do that?
Right.
I did something during my divorce that I just I felt like I needed to do it. And what it was like after a year of living separately and asking my soon to be ex to take his clothes already, I chose to throw them out.
Mm.
So I took them, I bagged them. I don't throw anything out. I donated them somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
But apparently the next day he was going on a ski trip and he needed that jacket.
Whoops.
So he came into the house, he barged into the house, he looked for the clothes, they weren't there. And I was like, I stood my ground. I'm like, I told you I would throw them out if you didn't get them. And so I did. And it like blew up. And the next day we had a hearing or a meeting with the two lawyers, and it did not go my way. But in that moment, I felt like I really had to do that. So had I taken a moment to pause to really think about what is the impact
Right.
of what I'm doing now? Like it
Right.
might feel good in the moment, but how is it going to serve me afterwards?
Yeah.
And so it's the first thing I say is you're not going to get it right. You're just going to start. So just notice, what is my body feeling? You know, what value is being crossed at this moment that is
Mm.
leading me in this direction? It could
Mm.
be like nobody gets to talk to me that way. I'm standing for myself. No one gets
Right.
to talk to me that way. Okay, so how do we reframe your own behavior so that you stop receiving that, right?
Right.
Because we can't control them. We can only control ourselves.
I have a couple questions for you. So number one, I feel like I see this happen a lot with social media, right? People will like blow up their ex on social media and then they'll, the next day regret that, right? Because that's often where we turn to community nowadays and we look for support. And I've had many people come to me and go, I think I posted things I shouldn't have posted, right? So that's number one. Number two is though, Lisa, when you're going through this and you're structuring that, and kind of, I love this like analogy of pouring the wine right into this cup. How do we do that without feeling like we are acquiescing our
Mhm.
spirit to somebody else?
Yeah, that's a good one because it feels that way because your relationship has been that, right? The thing that you're most familiar with is giving up on yourself.
Right.
So how does not lashing out feel like standing for yourself? It's a really good question. I shift that in a spiritual perspective where like controlling your own behavior is a spiritual experience and it means you're in control. It
Right.
doesn't mean you're giving in. It means you're maybe being strategic about what you want the result to be, right?
Yeah.
The long-term result, not the result in the minute, but the
Right.
long-term result. So if you feel like you're acquiescing, ask yourself a question. What am I giving up here? And then
Mm,
what am I getting? Because there's always a give and take here.
right. Right.
So it's real, the feeling like I always am the good guy, right? I
Mhm.
always am the good guy. But it's probably not 100% true. There are
Yeah.
probably always like digs at the end of the sentence, right? One of the tools I gave to a client once was just don't say the second half of that sentence, right?
Yeah.
You said what you needed to say, just don't say the second half and
Mhm.
see how far it gets you.
Mm.
And it completely changed her relationship with her husband.
Mm.
Even
Interesting.
the first time she like held herself back, and it is hard not to say the second half of that sentence.
Mm.
So, because when we're so angry at the other person,
Yeah.
they're an object. We just want them to do what we want them to do or stop doing what they're doing.
Right.
But if we look at them like they're a human, like what do we think is going through their head? When they're attacking us, what if it's because they're really insecure? What
Right.
if it's that they have this need to control because they feel powerless? So now we're stepping into the shoes of we don't have to like it and we don't have to feel real empathy for them. But how does taking ourselves out of the fight get us closer to what we need? And that's the spirituality of divorce.
Yeah, divorce and every other thing that we do in our life,
Yeah.
right? So important. So Lisa, talk to us about how you help clients through this cuz this is not something I could have done by myself during
No.
divorce.
No. Um, the first thing I encourage my clients to do is breathe. I say just breathe. All right. You're feeling it. Your body is getting heightened. The energy is there. Your face is flushing. You're breathing heavy. Your heart is going.
Mhm.
Notice it and take a breath. And I don't do the box breathing. I don't know really how that works, but I
Mhm.
find just
Yeah.
pausing and noticing connects you with different energy. And
Yeah.
one thing we had talked about in another space was this idea that it is the energy that is the spiritual piece of us. So when the energy we're experiencing is negative, tight, angry, fighting energy, everything around us is going to feel that.
Right.
But noticing that it's there is the first step in releasing it. And I'm not saying you're there, but take one step. Just notice it. And if it gives you time to pause, it means that you might not say that thing that you can't take back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's gonna save you a lot of grief and anxiety.
Yeah. I was reading years ago, I read Brené Brown's The Gifts of Imperfection.
Mhm.
And she talks about the SFD, which is, part of my language, the shitty first draft. And in the shitty first draft, you write everything that you want to
Yeah.
say, every angry thing, you get it out.
Mhm.
You do not send that shitty first draft.
No.
You do not send it. You get those emotions out.
Yeah.
And now you can look at it and say, okay, what do I need to communicate? What's most important? Or what if I don't need to share this at all?
Right.
I don't want them to know they got me. I just know that this is how I feel. So I'm putting my soul on the piece of paper
Mm.
and then it's mine. It's not theirs,
Right.
but it is in the universe. So
Right.
the energy has been released.
Mm. Is that something you can help people do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I invite them to make me the shitty first draft recipient. All right.
Yes.
Tell me what you need to say. Or I give them time in our sessions
Yeah.
to write it. Write
Yeah.
it with your own hand.
So important. So important to get it out that way. So when somebody is considering divorce or going through divorce, navigating it, what kind of services do you offer them that they could come, if they're listening to this and they're like, "Oh, I need Lisa." What kind of services do you offer?
So I help you in the hardest decisions, right? So I have clients who come to me. I give a 30-minute free complimentary consult and I ask, what's going on? What brought you to my space? And I let them share their story and I help them identify what are the decisions they need to make now, what's most urgent, and let's walk through them. And I help them tell me the story so they know I'm listening. I'm very focused on intentional listening. And I ask people, I reflect back, I ask them if I heard them correctly. What did I get wrong? What did I miss? I want them to know that what they have to say really matters.
Mm.
And then we build a plan for what happens next. So a lot of people come to me and they're like, how do I tell my kids? What do I tell my kids?
Right.
Do we have to tell them together? That's like a rule. Everyone thinks that's the rule. Or
Mhm.
do I have to stay in the same house? How can I stay in the same house? And we walk through different iterations of what that could look like and what it might mean to leave.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, but thinking critically, not thinking pragmatically, not simply going toward what you want most, but
Right.
going to what's going to get you toward your ultimate goal. So
Right.
I'm not sure. I used a lot of words. I'm not sure that really answered the question of what
It
I
did.
do.
Yeah.
I help people start to make decisions from a space of clarity because they're releasing.
And that's the only place we can make really educational decisions is
Yeah.
from that space. We can't do it if we're in fight or flight because
No.
we're not gonna make decisions we're gonna look back and be proud of necessarily. Um, Before we let you go, if somebody's listening to this and they feel disconnected from their sense of spirituality while they're going through their divorce, what would be some words of encouragement you could leave them with?
So everybody gets disconnected, right? That's part of the human condition is we feel alone. We feel like we don't know who we are anymore. We feel like we've lost our voice. So I would say to that person, you're not alone. It's not you. It's all of us. And then I would say, find the space within yourself, the spiritual zone that ever resonated with you. Like, was there a time that you can remember you felt a little more in touch with yourself? And it's not that you're spiritual and you have a relationship with a higher power, although it could be that. It's that you're connected to your soul, your heart. It's not just what do I have to do? How am I going to get through this? It's more, who am I and how do I want to show up? And sometimes I ask people to think of others in their lives who have traits and characteristics that they admire. And I say, if you see it, you can be it. It sounds like a tagline, but it's real. If you see a skill or a tool or a value that you really admire, then that's yours.
Mm.
You just need to give yourself the encouragement to walk that path. And again, that's the spiritual space. So if you feel like you're just not a spiritual person and you're never going to connect that to the woo-woo, this is not just about woo-woo. It's about purpose and meaning. And we all are searching for purpose and meaning.
Yes, love it. I love it so much, Lisa. We appreciate you so much. If you want to work with Lisa, you can head to Fresh Starts. Of course, we'll connect you. You can head to Lisa's Instagram. She's over there also. Lisa, you are a doll. You are so wise. I could listen to you just speak all day. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having Fresh Starts.
Divorce Happens is produced by Fresh Starts Registry, the only divorce registry platform for everything you need to begin again, including home items, hype team, and everything in between. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh. We're here to support you before, during, and after divorce. Head to freshstartsregistry.com for more info.